Decks that care about a particular creature type, or Kindred decks, are often thought of as decks with a high volume of cards that either are or create tokens of a given creature type. In the past, I've subtitled several decks as not being Kindred, despite often being built that way. So whether you disagree with those takes on those decks, have a favorite tribal deck that you want to improve, or are new to the game and want to hear more about it, let's discuss the mechanics of Kindred. Broadly, we say a deck is Kindred, or that a commander wants to be a Kindred deck, if it cares about a creature type in some way. But if we look closer, the ways that a deck care about that creature type give rise to very different experiences. Tribal, or Kindred decks, care about a creature type in 4 distinct ways, depending on whether it values the quantity of those creatures, merely certain qualities of those creatures, or both, which can be identified with 2 questions. Are cards of this creature type necessary to get the value of my commander? Are large volumes of that creature type necessary to maximize the value of my commander? For example, Admiral Beckett Brass has an ability that increases the power of your pirates on board. That ability technically does not require you to have any other pirates in your deck to get value. You could easily build with only other spells that make pirate tokens. In theory, there is a valid build path for Brass with no other pirates in the deck. That doesn't mean that the best Brass deck would be built that way, but this observation helps us temper any biases about how many cards in the deck need to be pirates. It's very easy to lock into a mindset that it must have that creature type because it's mentioned in the text box, but in the process of doing this, you might lose sight of other really powerful synergies with the deck. This ability also adds 1 power to your board with 1 other pirate, and 10 power to your board with 10 other pirates, so it does maximize value with larger quantities of pirates on the board. So we call the Admiral a quantity Kindred deck. These decks often win with some kind of overrun adjacent effect that capitalizes on your critical mass of this creature type. Compare that to another commander, Ezio. This text box definitely says something about creature types, but when read carefully, these abilities do not maximize value with high quantities of assassins. But when it comes to only paying 2 mana for an assassin, that is certainly a question of quality, namely mana value. We cheat the most mana by playing the highest cost assassins. And unlike in Admiral Brass's deck, you can't actually get away with no other assassins in the deck and still be able to take advantage of this ability. Since neither of these abilities maximize value with high quantities of assassins, but do require high qualities of assassins to be in the deck, it makes sense to call this a quality Kindred commander. These decks don't usually run overrun effects, since they may not be making critical masses of these creatures. Instead, their win cons are often guided by the intra-card synergies of the creatures they're including. The next example comes from Belacor, the Dark Master, whose first ability cares about the quantity of demons you control, and whose second ability cares about the quality of demons you control. Because this commander cares about the creature type on both axes, and is a more holistic, more complete instance of the archetype, let's call this Complete Kindred. But what if a commander's text box said nothing about quantity or quality of that creature type? What if it did neither of these things, but still wanted cards that have the same creature type? Layla's Goad ability maxes out when you get through with 3 fairies. But Layla is already 1 fairy herself, and the other 2 are created by her own abilities. This commander neither cares about the qualities of any fairies you might play, nor does it actually need you to run high volumes of fairies in any way whatsoever. It seems like there is a perfectly valid build path that includes no other fairies whatsoever. It is playing neither a quantity game nor a quality game. Any fairies that might end up on the list are probably there because they have flash, or the payoffs for fairies that Alayla doesn't have. Their fairy creature type is more coincidence than anything else. In the same thought, Alayla also is not a rogue Kindred deck, but that doesn't stop people from running Una's Blackguard, because the tokens we make are also rogues. So let's call this kind of deck Coincidence Kindred. The build philosophies behind these 4 classes of Kindred decks are very different, and it's helpful to keep them in mind when reading and brewing for your commanders. In quality Kindred decks, since you're not necessarily spreading out as wide a board as possible, cards that capitalize on those quantities also don't make for great inclusions, and can distract from whatever the real focus of the deck is. Instead, what you're usually looking for are ways to take advantage of the specific tools your deck is using from the top end of that creature type, which these cards do a much better job of. In quantity Kindred decks, since you're playing for critical mass more than any particular effect or quality of those creatures, you can loosen up on some of your card search criteria. Token generation may even be more important than a card being that creature type. We can play fewer of these effects that care more about casting these creature types, and consider more of these cards that care about controlling these creature types. In complete Kindred decks, since we care about both quality and quantity, it's best if we avoid most of the cards mentioned previously. Instead of choosing these generic Kindred payoffs, we're likely opting for the specific Kindred payoffs that are in our creature type. To some of you, that may seem like the obvious thing, but that's likely because these are the decks that you're meant to think of when you think of Kindred. It's these other Kindred decks that are seeing these cards played that may not actually need them. In the coming weeks, I'll be posting a flurry of videos for the patrons of mine that have requested deck decks for these Kindred commanders. So before those videos are published, let's give these commanders some additional context. Brass and Kenway are both quantity Kindred commanders, but there are remarkably few pirate token makers, so we'll have to construct some workarounds for these tribes to fit authentically within their designs. Belacor is a complication, because one of these payoffs is so strong that you don't even need to play or control demons to make it exceptionally powerful. We will be excluding those particular tactics since it seems like a less authentic or organic play pattern to adopt with these design principles. But I acknowledge here that the more powerful version of deck is likely to spam clones. Ezio is a quality Kindred commander, whose second ability essentially amounts to a 10 damage burn effect at low life totals. It may come up, but we'll be trying to build a different play pattern based on what our assassins suggest. Meanwhile, Alayla is merely Kindred by coincidence. She doesn't really need fairies in the deck, nor does she capitalize on large volumes of them. But it is nonetheless true that some of the best inclusions for this deck are in fact fairies. So on the other side of this, it will still come out looking as a Kindred deck. Stay tuned for more on these commanders and their deck lists. A special thanks to all my amazing patrons. I started this channel to speak more to the game theory of Magic, which often takes up more time than YouTube is kind for, and the generous support of my patrons makes it possible to create the way that I want to. Patrons have access to cut content, extended discussions, guides, and resources for their favorite decks, as well as the occasional spell table game over on Discord. Consider supporting the channel today. If you like this video, give it a share and subscribe for more so you don't miss any of these upcoming videos.